Hello, everyone. I hope you are doing well. So, today we're going to spend a little bit of time going over some more information about the new world. And again, as we've been looking at for the past couple weeks now, we are fairly certain that this world isn't new. This is a world that has been here before. People have been here before and established a life here, but it is new to the Europeans. It's new in their context. So we are going to spend a little bit of time diving deeper into that and seeing how this connection, how these continents continue to come closer together. So let's talk Columbus. All right, we've been waiting a little while to do this, but it's time to talk about him. Let's look at this joyous man right here. So, I want to talk about reasons for Columbus. What was Columbus doing when he was sailing? And we looked at reasons for exploration, period, last week, but I want to look at reasons specifically for Christopher Columbus. And first, some myths. He was not trying to find a new world, he was not setting out for some sort of new colony for Spain or Portugal. Nor was he trying to prove the earth was round. Remember, we already established last week that the majority of smart people knew the earth was round. We didn't need to establish that. It was all about money, as most things in this world are, all about money. He is trying to find a new trade route to Asia to avoid those taxes that we were talking about before. And as you see from the image here, let me move myself. There you go. A lot of the spices that the Europeans desired is starting here. And every time it goes along, goes from one trader to another, merchants are raising the price of this spice so they can make some money. And by the time it makes it all the way to the end, it's really expensive. I like this graphic because the money sign thing is kind of like when you look up a restaurant on Google and you see it shows you how many money signs they are, and you're like, listen, I'm a two money sign guy max, like 3 4 money signs. Chop House, I'm sorry, not doing it. I'm more of a one or two money sign guy. But eventually, in 1492, Columbus sails the ocean blue. After months at sea, he finally spots land. And for his part, he thought he was in the East Indies of Asia. And we'll take a look at a map in just a second. But he thought he was in the East Indies of Asia, hence the name Indians. He thinks he's in the Indies, so he names the people there Indians. In reality, nowhere close to the Indies east of Asia. In reality, he's in the Caribbean and islands around Cuba. So let's take a look at this map here. Here is the world. And our friend Chris thinks he's over here. He thinks he's made it to the East Indies of Asia. When in reality, sorry, buddy. Boom. You are all the way over here. Again, the plan was if I go this way and the earth is round, eventually I'll come back around to the Indies. And he thought that's what he had done. He thought he had made it there, but he made it over here to the Caribbean. Which, by the way, we always call it Caribbean. When you're going on vacation there, or you hear about people going on vacation there. I don't go on vacation to the Caribbean because I'm not made of money. But if I was, and I went on a vacation there, you would call it the Caribbean. The movie about the pirates with Johnny Depp is Pirates of the Caribbean. It'd be weird if you said you were going on vacation to the Caribbean. But would it also be weird if you called the movie Pirates of the Caribbean? So I'm not sure why one is one way and one's the other, but there's my rambling for the day. So what happens when he actually lands? So eventually, after a number of trips, Christopher Columbus will make it to a couple different places. He'll make it to present-day South America. He'll make it to Haiti. He'll make it to a couple different locations. And while we talked about one of Spain's goals being spreading Christianity, remember we talked about that with the Crusades and bringing light to those in darkness. While that was important, the money thing is more important. Spain's sense of growing imperialism, which is wanting to spread your power to the rest of the world. That's what imperialism means, is wanting to spread your country's influence and power to the rest of the world. And economic competition that's going on between the countries, that leads them to seek wealth in any new opportunity they can find. And hey, this is a new opportunity. So let's see if we can try and make some money here somehow. So at first, the exchange between the Spanish and the natives is relatively peaceful. They're kind of okay with each other at first. Everybody's kind of feeling each other out. I do want you to keep in mind, this is not Thanksgiving, okay? This is not the Mayflower. This is not Plymouth Rock, okay? These are two completely different ventures, two completely different eras. We're not landing in Plymouth Rock and having this nice sit-down meal with Native Americans. This is still in South America. It's still in the Caribbean, like we've talked about. But it is starting off peaceful, but quickly this is going to change as the Spanish start setting up their settlements and their villages. They're kicking natives out of their homes. This can kind of be connected when humans now kick animals out of their habitats to set up their homes. This is pretty much what the Spanish were viewing it as, is these people are in our way and we want to set up here, so we are going to kick you out and do what we need to do. Not only that, but they also enslaved the natives, forcing them to search for gold, work in fields and mines. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And at first, there was some resistance. It was passive, meaning they are refusing to do the work. It's not quite in your face resistance yet. But finally, these quote unquote Indians will fight back aggressively. But by that point, they had been weakened so much by the spreading of European disease, which we'll talk about, and they were no match for European technology. Again, we're not talking about iPads, we're talking about weaponry here, that their aggressive pushback and fighting against the natives or against the Spanish really wasn't anything impactful. So let's look at one case study here. Let's look at one specific example to see the devastation of this, to see how this all sets up. Haiti. Dominican Republic and Haiti are connected on an island called Hispaniola. Estimates of Haiti before pre-Columbian population, there are some that are up to 8 million. Bartholomew Columbus, yes, Christopher's brother, took a census in 1496, and he came up with around 1.1 million. A lot of historians feel the number is probably somewhere in the middle, around 3 million. By 1516, so 20 years later, thanks to, quote, Indian slave trade labor and labor policies, we were down to 12,000 from, at the very minimum, 1.1 million to 12,000. Give it another 30 years or so, only 200 are left. By 1555, the native population is gone. As these native populations died out, the Europeans realized, we've gotten kind of comfortable not doing the work ourselves. This has been pretty great so far, not doing this work. Now, we accidentally or purposefully killed all of our workers. And I really don't want to do the work. So we're going to have to find another source of labor. And that's when the African slave trade really picks up. Because they wiped out their entire population of labor here, they need another group to supplant it, and they bring them in. Now, we all know disease. We all know disease with Columbus, and we say, oh, disease killed a lot of the native population there. They use disease, blah, blah, blah. But what do we mean when we say disease? What does this actually entail? And I apologize. For the next couple minutes, it's going to get a bit gross and gruesome, but that's just how this is. I found another presentation resource that did a pretty good job of summarizing it and putting it in unfortunately vivid terms. So I'm going to use that as I go along. But I show this to emphasize to you, when we think of disease, we think of, or oftentimes, I'm not saying all of us do this, but a lot of us don't really think of it as a bad weapon. Oh, you get sick and die. And that's how it goes. But I want you to realize that this is not something you want to play with. So there's going to be an image that pops up here. I like this slide because it has the least graphic image of what we're going to talk about, but it is still an image nonetheless. So here we go. A lot of the diseases that are going on are of European origin. And part of what develops your body getting an immunity to a disease is having some exposure to the disease. So this is actually becoming a big argument right now in COVID times, where people are saying one strategy to combating COVID is not trying to reduce the spread and a herd immunity, where if we all get it, we can all develop a immunity to it. Some people are debating whether that's the best idea, but there is some fact to the idea that as you are exposed to it, your body starts to figure out how to fight this. A lot of these diseases had never made it to this continent before. So the Europeans the Native Americans, hadn't had any chance to develop bodily skills to fight back against it. So they had extremely high death rates. The one that we're going to talk about the most right now is smallpox. Smallpox is going to be the highest killer for the native population. So that's what that image is up in the top right there, is somebody who is infected with smallpox. There are way more graphic images for your perusal if you want. If you are squeamish, I would not suggest going down that route, but there are there. So I want to actually go into a little bit about what smallpox is, because I want you to realize how bad this is, and that it's not just you cough, you get a tummy ache, and then you die. That it's a real thing. So as you start, You start getting flu-like symptoms, COVID-like symptoms, unfortunately. You get a fever, body aches, you start getting really tired and vomiting. And this is usually a couple days of this. And for most of us, that would be enough to say, all right, I'm good. But it keeps going. I'm going to move myself over here. I'll actually cover up this. There we go. Next, you get a rash, which starts on your tongue and in your mouth. And these spots will turn into sores that will break open. And the virus is spreading throughout your body at that point. And you are, as an individual, extremely contagious at that point. Around the time your mouth starts getting broken down and the sores are starting to actually go away a little bit, a rash appears on your skin, starting in your face, going through your arms and legs, down to your hands and your feet. And this is an extremely rapidly spreading rash. Usually covers your entire body within about 24 hours. And after this rash comes, the fever falls and the person could start feeling a little bit better, but then it goes downhill pretty quickly. By the third day of the rash, these rashes become raised bumps. By the fourth day, these bumps fill with a thick liquid and often have a depression in the center. If those bumps pop, that in and of itself can spread the disease to other people, which again is covering your entire body, makes it very contagious. The fever will often rise again, and your body will eventually succumb to the disease. Even today, we have no major treatment for smallpox. Luckily, it has been all but eradicated in the world, so the disease is no longer rampant in major countries. So it's not something that we necessarily have to worry about. But I just want us to realize that this isn't something that is just like, oh, you get a tummy ache. It's a real thing that unfortunately is really gross and really deadly. So enough about that. Let's talk about how the Spanish treated the native population there beyond just giving them disease. So when the Spanish first land in the New World, within a couple of years, and we've moved on from 1492 with Columbus, and we're now in 1513, we get the Requerimiento. And this is a written document created by the Spanish king and queen, which basically allows explorers to punish, enslave, or even kill natives who would not convert. So converting to Christianity is still a major goal for the Spaniards, but you're going to see in a little bit that they're using it to extend some other goals. Explorers were told to read this aloud when meeting indigenous peoples via translator. And if there was resistance, they had the right to respond with force. I want to read a little bit of this text for you, just so you can start to understand the options or lack thereof that they have. I'm going to move myself over a little bit. If you do so, you will do well. And by doing so, they mean if you do what we say and convert. If you do so, you will do well, and that which you are obliged to do their highness, and we in their names, shall receive you in all love and charity, and shall leave you, your wives, and your children, and your lands free without servitude, that you may do with them and with yourselves freely that which you like and think best. And they shall not compel you to turn Christians unless you yourselves, when informed of the truth, should wish to be converted to our holy Catholic faith, as almost all the inhabitants of the rest of the islands have done. We're not going to make you do anything. unless you want to, but everybody else has wanted to. Isn't that weird? And if you do this stuff, you're going to have a great life. We'll leave you alone. You're going to have all these great things. You and your family are going to have a great time. And besides this, their highness award you many privileges and exemptions and will grant you many benefits. So if you do this thing that all the cool kids are doing it, everybody else is doing it, doesn't matter that it's because we're going to threaten to kill you. If you don't, if you do this thing, you're going to live an awesome life. Second paragraph, and this is where we were going up a little bit. The train was going up, and now, boom, the tone of this is going to take a little bit of a dive. But if you do not do this and maliciously make delay in it, if you don't do what we're telling you to, I certify to you that with the help of God, we shall powerfully enter into your country and shall make war against you in all ways and manners that we can, and shall subject you to the yoke and obedience of the church and of their highnesses. We shall take you and your wives and your children and shall make slaves of them, and as such sell and dispose of them as their highness may command. And we shall take away your goods and shall do you all the mischief and damage we can. As to vassals who do not obey and refuse to receive their lord and resist and contradict him, and we protest that the deaths and losses which shall accrue from this are your fault and not that of the highnesses. We have said this to you and made this requisition. We request the notary here present to give us his testimony in writing, and we ask the rest who are present here to give witness of this requisition. So that changed quickly. It went from, hey, if you do this thing, which don't worry about it, everybody's doing it. It's just this little thing called convert and work for us for free for the rest of your life. You'll be fine. You'll have a great life. Oh yeah, by the way, if you don't, we are going to take you and your wives and your children. We're going to enslave them or kill them, sell them off to whoever you want. By the way, all the deaths and losses that come from this are your fault. We told you what to do. Our hands are tied. We had no other choice. So really, you have no one to look at but yourself. That changed pretty quickly. So imagine somebody coming into your world that you've never seen before, looks really strange to you, has these weapons that you've never seen before, and is convincing you to start praying to some god you've never heard of, or else they will enslave you and your family and sell them off and potentially kill them. It's an interesting life you're stuck with. But not all Spanish men hated the natives. Some liked the natives. Some really liked the natives. And some liked the natives so much that they started having children with these native women. And these offspring are known as mestizos. So mestizos has one Spanish parent and one native parent. Almost always, it is a Spanish man with a native woman. The other way around would not happen. That person would be killed. It is, in this case, Spanish people of power taking advantage of the native population and women and having children with them. But those children were named mestizos. So how were those mestizos treated? How were this mixed population? So they're in kind of a unique position. They're not quite the Spanish elite, but they're not quite the abused Indians either. They're really kind of stuck in the middle here. So while they're not treated nearly as poorly as the native population, they were still seen as lesser than the true Spanish blood, and they had very few opportunities. They're kind of stuck in this middle here. They're not going to be abused like the bottom part of the population, but they aren't going to succeed like the top will. They're kind of stuck in the middle. So then you have the land, and the question is, what do we do with the land? Because keep in mind, all of this land is technically owned by the Spanish crown, back on the other side of the ocean. So how can you run land? How can you own land when you are on the other side of the world? Well, they set up an encomienda system. And this was established in the early 16th century. And the encomienda system means to entrust. Encomienda means to entrust. And this is the Spanish crown saying, all right, this is our land. We're going to divvy it up to the Spanish people that are there, the people who've gone over in the ships. We're going to divvy it up there. And you can take a cut of the profits. You can use the natives as your labor as long as you Christianize them and essentially make them a part of our empire. Send us some of the profits back and we're all good. So it's profits for the Spaniards who are there, profits for the crown, and more citizens for the crown. So it's kind of a win-win-win, major loss if you're a native. But other than that, it's all wins. It's all wins, baby. It's all good. So that's this encomienda system where the crown is entrusting the people there to act on their behalf. So the plan is that the Spanish settlers will protect and care for and Christianize the Native Americans. And in exchange, the natives will work a portion of their time for Spanish settlers. That seems like a fair trade. Hey, we're going to protect you. We're going to show you the light. We're going to make your life so much better you can hardly imagine. All we need you to do is just work for us for a little bit. That's no big deal. And honestly, that's a deal. That's a deal at half the price. To you work for us just a little bit of your time and we make your life incredibly better. That sounds great. Reality, the Spanish settlers instead force long labor hours, don't really pay them. They don't care about protecting them. They take land that wasn't meant for them in the encomienda system, and the Indians die from these diseases that we talked about in harsh living and working conditions. So it in no way worked out like it meant to. I mean, for the Spanish, it did. They made their money, but from the perspective of the natives, it was just complete abuse of power with no real benefit. So this is this hierarchy here of people in the New World. At the top, you have the Peninsulares. These are the Spaniards born in Spain. They came over on ships to the New World. They are clearly at the top. They are pureblood Spaniards. They are the empire there. Underneath that, right underneath that, you have Creoles. And these are people who their parents were Peninsulares, and they came over, and then the Creoles were born in the New World. So they weren't born in Spain. They didn't live there. They were born in the New World, but they were still Spanish blood. So they were still towards the top. In the middle, we have the mestizos. That's what we just talked about, where they're kind of suspended in the middle. They have one Spanish and one Native American parent. They're suspended in the middle. Underneath that, we have the Native American Indians, and even below that, we have the enslaved peoples from Africa. So there really is a very rigid structure there of power and your lot in life. As a reminder, if I'm going too quick for you, you can always rewind, pause, whatever you need. So long story short, Columbus is not the first person to step foot on America. And when I say America, I mean North and South America as a whole. We're talking about this as one unit. I'm not talking about the continental United States. He's just the first person with the right resources to really publicize his landing and get others to follow with him. He has the right technology. He has the right goals to change things there. He didn't even really know where he was. He died thinking he was in the East Indies. So he did make a lot of change. he did bring an empire over here, but he's not the first person to find the Americas. So the question is, if not him, who? Who should get the credit for finding this new world? Well, a few options. Number one, maybe the first people. How about that? What about the Native Americans who are already living on the land? That's a noble idea. But if we want to go beyond that, the Norse, or also known as the Vikings, they have made voyages from their homes in Scandinavia and Greenland to the American coast. It's believed that they got as far down as North Carolina before Columbus made it. So that's an option. Some historians believe that seafarers in different boats made it from Africa and Asia to the Americas as early as 750 BC. So if we're at 1492, 750 BC, that's over 2,000 years before Columbus. So people might have made it there before. But one person I do want to talk about before we conclude is Amerigo Vespucci. So between 1497 and 1503, so shortly after Columbus's voyages, Amerigo Vespucci is also crossing the Atlantic, and he's kind of going up and down the coast of modern South America and Brazil. And because he knows the plants and animals that are found in Asia, and he's paying attention to the plants and animals that he's finding in Brazil, he starts to conclude that this must be a new continent. Columbus couldn't have made it to Asia. This has to be something new. This has to be some land that Europe has never been to. And in 1507, basing it off of Vespucci and his tales and his ships, we get the first map showing the, quote, New World, and it has a big mass of land on the other side of the Atlantic. And Amerigo, he labels it America in honor of Vespucci. There you go. You see it, America. And you see, again, this is South America and North America all blocked into one big land. We don't know yet that they're separate land masses. We'll get there, but we don't know that quite yet. So there is one copy of this map known to have survived in existence. It's at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. So if you're ever in D.C., you can check it out. Usually they have it on display. And this is the first ever notation of America. So if you're ever wondering where the United States of America gets its name, it is from our friend Amerigo Vespucci. So this is where we will conclude for today. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and respond to the questions. We are going to pick it up looking at Columbus a little bit more deeply in terms of your opinions of him. There are some pros. When we looked at the Columbian Exchange, there are some cons. Thinking about Columbus Day. Is Columbus Day worth celebrating? We're going to take some time and look at that over the coming days. But at this point, that concludes our discussion for today. And I will see you next time.